Hi and welcome to another episode. What we've got is the Spectrum Next still. As you know, I've been playing around. I've still got to test the Wi-Fi and I've still got to test the RTC, the real-time clock. But I assume they work and they're in there and everything like that. But what I will do is test them before I crack it open. But when I do crack it open, I want to install the extra 1 megabyte. So I'll get a total of 2 megabytes to play around with. Well, not the full 2 megabytes because obviously stuff's used up, but you get the idea. And also fit an internal speaker. Now, for some silly reason in my false memories, I thought that it came with a speaker already built in. As I mentioned in the previous episode, that's not true. You have to install your own speaker if you want one. Now, let's be honest, most people aren't going to want one because the audio can go out the back of the machine. But I just want to play around with the chance of having the original speaker. Now, this is obviously just a tiddly little PC speaker, you know, to so that you know the boot for the BIOS boot beeps and stuff, so you know error messages and things like that, so you can count the beeps. But a slightly better speaker is this one, and this is the same spec, at least I believe it is the same spec. If it focuses, come on now, there we go. That's the same spec as what was inside a rubber key Spectrum. So I want to install one of those, and it means actually soldering 4 points of these in, these right angled ones, and hooking it up. So what I'm going to do is desolder the wires from this one and then solder it up to this one. They both came wide and everything like that. I didn't do this already. I have thought about soldering directly onto the pins, but I've decided otherwise. I just want to get it going in this short bit of wire and have this nice little connector on there that says speaker. I don't really need it, but that's what I'm going to do. So let's have a go at getting the Wi-Fi going. Okay, let's get going and go into browser, and then we go into demos and ESP for the Wi-Fi dongle. Now, I've seen some people do videos on the Wi-Fi.bas. It works, I'm not knocking it, not knocking the people that made those videos. But I prefer using this Wi-Fi 2. It's loaded, so we'll type in run. So it actually starts running because it's written in BASIC. It's figuring out everything it needs to figure out. Now obviously I've already ran this and my information's there, that's why I'm blurring it out. But what I want to show you is how to actually find it. So you press 5. And it will search through all the numbers, and then it will tell you how many it has found, and then just wait for a little bit, you know, just a few seconds here and there, and so that it can say that's that, and then you press enter, and then it shows you a list of what ones it's found. In my case it's number 1. Again, I'm hiding what my Wi-Fi is and what my neighbour's Wi-Fi names are, but I type in 1. And it says joining, and then it wants the password, so blah 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 blah. I'm just putting some random numbers for myself, but obviously you put in the correct ones that are there. So I'm just going to delete all that off, and then I'm going to type in what mine actually is and go to the next screen. All it does is find all the information it needs to find, and then boom, that's it, you're in. Easy enough, nothing else to do. But I'd leave the firmware update alone until you're told to do a firmware update, but it seems to work fine at the moment at least. So press 0 to quit. That's it, you're done. So you can press reset if you wanted to from there, but that's the Wi-Fi setup. So let's figure out how to set up the RTC, or the real-time clock. Okay, so we need to go to the command line so that we can program up the RTC. Now I've not set anything so far, but let's have a look if it has got the date. So .date date. No valid RTC signature found. Try setting the date first. Okay, so to do that we type in .date again, and then we put in quotes sort of the standard that you'd be used to. So for me today is the 16th. It's been a long time. Where's the / on a Spectrum? There it is, symbol shift V, and then we're in March, so 03 / 2020 quotes, press enter. Now the date has been set to that date. So if we do .date now, it should come back with it. There we go. And then we need to do the time, and we already know that the time hasn't been done. So, oh, it's got some random time in it anyway. Maybe it's just sort of programmed that in because I just typed the .date in, but that's obviously incorrect because there's a bracket. So let's do the time. Oops, learn to type while we're at it. And for the time, we also use quotes. And then for me, right this minute, close enough, is 11 colon symbol shift Z. And then 25 minutes past, let's call it, another colon and 0 seconds, quotes, press enter, and there we go, the time is now set to that. So dot time, and the RTC is all nice and set. So what we can do now is reset, and there we go, at the bottom of our wonderful menu system is the date and time. Okay, so we have the Wi-Fi module in here, and we also have the RTC module in here, so let's make it do something together. Now what we can do is make the Spectrum Next go off to the internet and get the real time from some kind of NTP server, which is basically it's a internet clocks really. There's lots of different ones, but we're going to type in a certain one and make it do that. So if there happens to be any kind of drift, I'm not saying there is, but let's be honest, in most cases there's a little bit of a drift in all these little real-time clock things. It might be over a year or even 10 years, but there's a little bit of a drift, and if you want to be really picky about it, you can make sure. So let's go to my command line, and then we need to type in 10.nxtp time dot nxtel.org, and then 12300 space minus Z equals, now this is going to be the local time zone code that you have. I'm going to put a link in the description directly to where you can find out how to type all this in again, and on there it's got a link to the time zone codes. You'll easily find it. But for me, being here in the UK, it's easy enough. It's GMT, and then press enter, and then line 20, go to 1000, and then on line 999 we're going to put in save quote C colon / which is on the Z and the V. Next ZXOS / auto exec .bas. Now for people that have used DOS and know about bat files and the autoexec.bat file, you'll understand from there that the concept of putting in commands so that something happens when you boot. And if you already do have an autoexec command, then just make sure that the very first line is put in there somewhere at the start of your autoexec.bat. So we need quotes, and then we can put in line 0, and what happens here is that means when you actually load up this basic file, it will automatically run starting from line 0, which of course no one has, so it jumps straight to line 1 and keeps going until it finds a line and then does that. So in our case it's line 10. So press return, and then we can type in list to make sure what we've typed in is what we wanted. If you do make a mistake, you're going to have to type in it all again until you learn how to jump around and take those line commands again. Now That seems perfectly fine at the moment. So we should be able to go to line 999, and that means it will save this particular listing as that file, which is a clever way of doing it because it means you don't have to keep typing all that save C colon next ZXOS blah 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 blah. So just go to 999. It's reporting back everything's all okay, and it's saved. Basically it's ran what it's supposed to have done from line 999, so it should be there. So we should be able to risk it now and press the reset button, and off it goes, finds the correct time, and zap, there you go. So that is the correct time, it's just found from the internet. Let's wait and find out when the summertime kicks in and if it shifted the clocks or not. It should do, depending on which server you're using. So as I say, for the description of how to do that, I will leave in the description so that you can figure out how to do it without just watching me make up my typing errors. Now let's get on to the fun stuff of opening this Spectrum up, getting in the speaker and getting in the extra memory. Okay, I've got the anti-static mat out, I've got all the bits and pieces that I need, just need to flip it over, get all the 6 screws out. So I've come across that one of the screws was balled out a bit, so be careful with that because you really do want to make this like a one-time only sort of job. And carefully get it open. There we go. The bottom's come off. Interesting markings on the inside there. So there's 8 screws and there's a bit of gooey stuff around here, so I'm going to clean that off later. It's probably solder residue. The back plate to the edge connector is on nice and strong there. I couldn't get it to remove when the case was on, so I'll remove that a bit later as well. So here's all the different screws. So there's 4 screws on the main board, and there's 4 screws on the SD PCB. They're the same screws, but I've kept them separated. So let's take out the small PCB first. It comes up nice and easy. But there is a small ribbon cable, so be careful. Lifting it up a little bit at the front and then pulling it up forward towards us, and then we can get to the ribbon cables for the keyboard. Trying to make sure we don't overstretch them or anything like that, we don't want to rip these. So carefully pulling them out. Don't forget the little one on this side. Being very careful, of course. So we've got the motherboard, and now we need to move the top of the case out of the way. So again, trying to find somewhere safe to put that. Just resting down the main motherboard. So there's a bit of weight to the keyboard. You can obviously tell it's from the metal for the back plating of the keyboard itself. So here's the memory, and slide it out. And obviously, as with all microchips, they tend to have a little notch, which let's line up with the ones that have already been installed on the PCB. So putting it as far left as we can, and then just pushing down. So putting the microchip with the dot on the same side as what the other chips are there, and then making sure basically that the TB blue ZX Spectrum is facing you, and push it in and press firmly so it clicks into place. There's a snapping sound, don't get too scared about doing that. And get hold of the second chip. It was being awkward. Again, making sure that the dot is lined up, and we're going all the way to the left hand side. And pressing in. And that seems to be fine. Actually, no, it's not fine. It needs to be pushed in a little bit further. There we go, it snapped into place this time. And then that's the whole 2 megabytes in now. So let's get on with doing the speaker. It's been hot glued, so I've got to remove that. Then I've got to desolder these wires so I can get it ready for the next speaker. This speaker should fit just down the corner here. It's supposed to be the same spec, if not a new old stock of the original 48K Spectrum speaker. So this speaker should sit in the corner rather nicely, but I have been reading that we might have to wait for a newer firmware that actually gives it another 6 decibels or something like that, because it's supposedly very quiet at the moment. So you might want to put off putting the speaker in just yet if it is the only thing you're doing, but if you're cracking it open to add the memory, you might as well do the speaker now as well. So getting all that hot glue off and desoldering this with some heat. So let's get that speaker and plug it out of the way and get the better speaker, we'll call it. Not squeezing it like that because that could damage the diaphragm, we don't want to be doing that. So actually maybe I'll just not use these helping hands after all, it'll just be easier to get them out of the way. So again, desoldering the wires. And remembering on this particular speaker with the points facing towards you that the red wire goes to the right. So remembering R, red right. It'll come in handy for later. Of course, making sure you don't try to desolder your finger. And since the wires have already come from the other one, they're actually already tinned, so it should be quite easy to get these straight back on again. There we go, one wire. Bit fiddly, but it is possible. And there we go, we've got both wires on there. That should be good enough. Turning off the soldering iron. Don't want to burn anything or set fire to anything. Right, so that's nice and ready for the Spectrum next. Let's tidy up a bit and get the motherboard back. Okay, we need 4 of these 4 angled pins. Carefully snap them off. There we go. Managed to snap off 4 of them. You just got to line it up properly and snap. But we don't need all of those, so we put them out of the way and then line up the 4. So I have the pins facing to the back of the motherboard. So again, having the ZB blue and the ZX Spectrum Next text the right way around for you to read, have the pins facing away at the back, get them in place, and then let's use the little speaker that we had before just to give us some height. compared to everything else and help keep those pins in place. By having the accelerator or the Raspberry Pi plugged in at the back, it does seem to give enough height having using a little speaker like that. So I'll get some solder and let's start soldering. Okay, so the 4 pins are here. We can easily solder onto those 4 different parts, making sure we don't put too much solder on so that we actually short the pins. But it's not that difficult really, because it is only 4 of them. The pins in the center don't matter that much, but you know, we should still take care. So fingers crossed that everything's working fine. Okay, zooming in, we can see that there's definitely some residue on here. I'm not saying I'm going to do a fantastic job, but I'm going to get some IPA and some cheapo Q-tips and clean it off. Now, I tend to use the lid from the Q-tips as a container for the IPA, as long as you don't put loads in at once, and when you have finished and it dries off, it will sort of evaporate anyway, and leaving you with a nice dry lid, and it's safe to put the lid back onto the Q-tips without making all of them wet and useless for later use. I'll talk to myself cleaning this up. As I said before, it's not as if I'm going to make sure I've done a fantastic job, but I wanted to get rid of most of that gunk that was on there. Now I'm going to try to take off the edge connector, because I found it very difficult to try to take it off while it was still on the case. Basically the part that's actually missing on the edge connector, which is correctly missing, it's just not there, you know, the slot that's there, the part of the plastic for the back bit is very stiff in there, and I was worried about breaking the case or something like that, probably being a bit over anxious, but while I'm here I might as well remove it. So turning everything around, let's get the speaker on. I've put a bit of Captain tape down, then put the plug of the speaker onto the pins, and then sliding the speaker in place, wrapping around the rest of the Captain tape. Doesn't really matter that I'm covering these pinholes on the side here, because I doubt I'll need them. If I do need them, I can always remove the Captain tape and try to figure out a better way of sticking this speaker down. Now that I've got it like this though, of course it moves a little bit, so I'm going to put another piece of Captain tape on and go for a vertical hold on it, sort of thing. So I've got to be careful of the hole in the motherboard, because that's where the screw goes in. But it doesn't really matter that I'm going over the top of the edge connectors at the front here, because they're actually connectors for if you were going to have the joystick plugs on the right hand side when you're sticking it inside a 48K case. A lot of info, but that's what they are for. I don't think the speaker is going to rattle around too much. I've got it pointing downwards because obviously that's where the holes are in the motherboard for the sound to get out. Let's get everything back in the case, so lining things up. So we've actually got the back of the case and the back of the motherboard facing towards us now. So I want to line up everything correctly, but first let's get the ribbon cables back in for the keyboard. And trying to balance everything and not scratch everything up can be a bit fiddly, but let's try our best. And be careful with this very thin 2-lane. Let's go across to the other side. Now the end of these ribbon cables they're a little bit thicker, so they're a bit stiffer there, but still be very careful with them. And it's the sort of thing you want to do once and once only. It's not really that you want to be doing this again and again and again, so try to keep going inside the Spectrum Next to a minimum. So at a bit of an angle we can line up the VGA so that it goes into the back of the case, and then we can line everything else up. Getting the small PCB for the SD card sort of clicks into place. Let's make sure we're not crushing any ribbon cables. I can just about see that the ribbon cable on the side here is getting crushed a little bit by the cap that's in there, so just gently moved it across so it's not getting pressed by that. But apart from that, everything seems to be fine. So time to get the screws in. Okay, using the cheapo electric screwdriver, putting the screws in, all I want to point out to you is that hold it quite lightly, so when the screw has gone all the way in and the screwdriver is wanting to now start spinning the whole body, you can realize that when it's doing that you need to stop because the screw's in. So just hold it lightly. I've not put all the screws into the back of the case because we might have to go back in again, but I have hooked up the VGA cable. I've not hooked up the sound cable because I want to prove any sound that's coming out of this is actually coming out of the speaker. But as I said before, it might be that at the moment it's quite quiet. Now we can see that we've got the 1092K, which is the extra memory that we put in there. It's not going to be 2048 because obviously there's a certain amount that has to be used up by the operating system and so on. But the time's coming up as well, so that's great. So we know we haven't broken those two parts at least. I press the NMI button and we can go down to settings, and then we can go to sound, and then we can go across internal speaker and we can press enter, and then we should get some clicking sound. Now sadly you're not going to pick it up on my microphone because it is very quiet, but it is clicking, so I know that the speaker's working. I just need to wait for the firmware to be updated so that more sound, or a louder sound, comes out of it. So now we can go across the tools and we can have a look at the keyboard tester and the Kempton joystick tester, and we can have a go at the RAM test as well. And then hopefully that all comes back perfectly fine, which I know in my case it actually has done, so that's good. So I need to get the screws in the back of the case, but apart from that, that's it. Well, I hope you come along to the next episode where I show you how to install the CPM. So until next time, happy gaming!